What if I told you that one of the most hyped marine engine startups raised over $1 million, promised a magical 654 horsepower 4-cylinder outboard, partnered with automotive engineering giants, and then vanished? Alfadan Outboards had everything: a visionary founder, patented technology solving a century-old engineering problem, celebrity boat builders waiting in line, and thousands of boaters throwing cash at their crowdfunding campaign. However, 5 years later, we're asking, have you even seen these outboards? The company left nothing but broken promises and angry investors. What really happened behind the scenes? Buckle up, because this goes deeper than you think. Back in 2017, Alberto Araujo founded Alfadan with an impossible dream: a 654 horsepower outboard from just 4 cylinders, weighing the same as a 400 horsepower V8, with no turbochargers or superchargers. If you know engines, your BS detector should be screaming. But here's what made believers. Araujo claimed he'd solved the secondary balance problem that plagued inline 4-cylinder engines for over a century. The secondary balance issue is why you don't see massive 4-stroke cylinder engines making ridiculous power. When pistons move up and down in a straight 4 configuration, especially big heavy pistons, they create vibrations that would shake your boat apart. The bigger the pistons, the worse it gets. That's why manufacturers use V6 and V8 configurations for high power. More cylinders means smaller, lighter pistons that rev higher with less imbalance. Alfadan claimed their redesigned bottom end with revolutionary connecting rod configuration eliminated this entirely. Their 8.4-litre naturally aspirated inline 4 would deliver 50% more horsepower, 50% fewer moving parts, and significantly less weight than traditional V8 outboards. The pitch was seductive. Instead of 6 outboards on your transom, you'd only need 3. Better fuel economy, lower costs, ultimate bragging rights. Here's where things get interesting, and why so many people bought in. Alfadan wasn't some garage dreamer with a 3D printer. They partnered with MAHLE Powertrain, one of the biggest names in engine development worldwide. MAHLE designs and builds engines for about 90% of major automotive manufacturers, and employs roughly 159,000 engineers and specialists globally. These folks know internal combustion engines better than anyone. When Araujo announced MAHLE Powertrain was under contract to develop the Alfadan 654, it gave massive credibility. This wasn't vaporwave. This was a legitimate engineering firm staking their reputation on the concept. Alfadan also claimed partnerships with 2 of the largest marine transmission and steering companies. The founder mentioned a hypercar company in Sweden reviewed the design and directed them to MAHLE. Everything sounded incredibly legitimate. The development plan seemed reasonable too. Build a single-cylinder test engine first, dial in every variable: piston design, head design, intake and exhaust configuration, ring position, valve size, and angles. After 12 months testing the single-cylinder prototype, scale up to the full 4-cylinder, run 1,500 to 3,000 dyno hours, then sea trial on a Freeman boat for 6 months. For anyone with engineering knowledge, this sounded like a proper development process. In 2020, Alfadan launched on Start Engine with a $15 million pre-money valuation, seeking to raise between $10,000 and just over $1 million. The pitch deck was slick, videos professional, and Araujo seemed passionate and knowledgeable. His background included manufacturing natural stone products and founding a company working on miniature gas turbines for military UAVs and RC aircraft. On paper, relevant experience. But here's where things smelled funny. The marine industry is brutally difficult to break into when competing against Mercury, Yamaha, and Honda. These giants have decades of refinement, worldwide dealer networks, parts availability, and billions in R&D. A startup waltzing in to revolutionize everything seemed optimistic at best. When experienced engineers on boating forums started doing math, things didn't add up. If you're enjoying this deep dive into marine industry disasters, smash that subscribe button. Alright, back to the Alfadan mess. Marine engineers and gearheads on forums like the Hull Truth started poking holes in Alfadan's claims. An 8.4-litre four-cylinder making 654 horsepower naturally aspirated means roughly 78 horsepower per litre. Not impossible, but race engine territory. Honda's screaming VTEC engines make 90 to 100 horsepower per litre by revving to 9,000 RPM with tiny pistons and razor-thin reliability margins. Outboard motors need saltwater survival, thousands of operating hours, and reliability pulling heavy loads. Completely different ballgame. The physics of massive four-cylinder displacement creates serious challenges. We're talking pistons approximately 146mm bore with 125mm stroke, huge pistons weighing several pounds each. Big heavy pistons have inertial limits on how fast you can whip them up and down before forces become unmanageable. Lower RPM means less power per displacement, requiring even more displacement to hit power targets, meaning even bigger, heavier pistons. A vicious cycle. Nobody addressed thermal management either. 4 big cylinders firing twice per crankshaft revolution creates intense concentrated heat. Modern V8s spread heat across more cylinders with better cooling dynamics. Patents eventually revealed some modified Scotch yoke mechanism which, while potentially reducing secondary imbalance, introduces bearing wear and lubrication challenges that marine applications brutalize. In 2020, as the pandemic hit, Alfadan announced they lost initial funding due to COVID. Founder Alberto Araujo mentioned dealing with a vulture capital group and deciding to go public through crowdfunding, claiming they wanted to build a company for boaters, owned by boaters. Nice sentiment, but also exactly what you'd say if traditional investors saw your business plan and ran. Venture capitalists aren't generous, but they are not stupid. If your project made financial and engineering sense, someone would fund it, pandemic or not. The crowdfunding campaign raised hundreds of thousands from enthusiastic boaters wanting to believe, but as months turned to years, updates became increasingly rare and vague. Social media went quiet, the website remained up but showed no product progress. Forum discussion shifted from excitement to skepticism to outright fraud accusations. By 2021, updates essentially stopped. Last meaningful communication mentioned still working on funding the test phase, and existing investors ready to fund production once testing completed. But they'd been saying they were in testing phase since 2018. After raising money specifically for development, where were results? Where were dyno charts, test data, proof of concept? Where was that single-cylinder test engine they promised? By 2024, forum discussions took a dark turn. Investors openly called it a scam. One user pointed out the founder's background was selling landscaping pavers, questioning how someone with that background redesigned the internal combustion engine. Others noted Alberto Araujo had been involved in RA microjets, working on miniature gas turbines, showing some relevant technical experience, but decades ago. Investment schedules on Start Engine quietly closed with no fanfare and no product. By 2025, the last forum post from someone claiming to be the founder said the design had reached maturity worth continuing, and they were working on funding the test phase. Same thing they'd said for 5 years. The pattern was clear. Either the world's most incompetent startup, or a well-orchestrated separation of enthusiastic boaters from their money. What makes Alfadan particularly frustrating is the core concept wasn't necessarily impossible. Better outboard engines are absolutely needed. Boats are getting bigger, and bolting 6 400 horsepower motors on transoms is expensive and ridiculous. A lighter, more powerful, efficient engine would be revolutionary, but wanting something doesn't make physics work, and passion doesn't replace engineering competence. Now let's discuss a company that actually delivered and still got shut down. Seven Marine was founded in 2010 by Rick Davis and his sons Eric and Brian in Wisconsin. Unlike Alfadan's vaporware, Seven Marine built and sold the most powerful outboard engines ever made, initially 557 horsepower and later the bonkers 627 horsepower. Seven Marine 627 SV. These weren't concepts, these were real production outboards you could buy and bolt on your boat. The engineering was genuinely impressive. Instead of reinventing the wheel, they took the proven GM LSA 6.2-liter supercharged V8, same engine platform powering Corvettes and Cadillac CTSVs, and adapted it for marine use. They mounted it horizontally, added freshwater cooling for durability and corrosion protection, and integrated everything into what was genuinely the most advanced outboard on the planet. These engines weren't cheap, $130,000 to $150,000 each, but if you wanted stupid amounts of power in an outboard package, Seven Marine was the only option. Engine cowlings could be highly customized, appealing to wealthy boaters who appreciate flamboyant style and cutting-edge technology. Production ran around 200 units yearly, matching the niche market of very wealthy customers needing that power and affording that price. The successful part of Seven Marine's story is they proved the market existed and their technology worked. Customers loved these engines, boat builders wanted them. The industry recognized Seven Marine as legitimate innovators, pushing the entire market forward. By all measures, a genuine success story, which makes what happened next infuriating. In 2017, Volvo Penta bought a majority stake. At first, seemed perfect. Volvo Penta is a massive marine propulsion company with global reach. Seven Marine, a premium brand making waves in high performance. Volvo moved production from Wisconsin to Tennessee, and the Davis brothers eventually left in 2020 after ensuring proper integration. Volvo executives then made statements about significant investments in parts, service, and production, saying there was no thought of shutting down. Then November 2020, barely 3 years after buying the company and months after founders left, Volvo Penta announced immediately discontinuing all Seven Marine production. Parent company Volvo Group committed to becoming net zero emissions by 2050, and gas-guzzling V8 outboards didn't fit that environmental strategy, so they pulled the plug. Not sold it, not spun it off, just shut it down, stunning the marine industry. If Seven Marine's story is frustrating, the Evinrude shutdown is heartbreaking. Evinrude essentially invented the commercially viable outboard in 1909. Ole Evinrude's design revolutionized boating and created an entire industry. For over a century, Evinrude represented American engineering and innovation. They survived world wars, depressions, and countless market changes, developing groundbreaking technologies including E-Tech direct injection that won the EPA's Clean Air Excellence Award. Genuinely impressive engines, combining two-stroke simplicity and lightweight nature with environmental performance meeting strictest emission standards. In 2001, Canadian company BRP acquired Evinrude and Johnson Outboards after the original parent went bankrupt. BRP re-engineered the troubled FICT system into the highly successful E-Tech technology. The new Evinrude E-Tech and E-Tech G2 engines were powerful, efficient, lightweight, and surprisingly clean burning. They were the only major manufacturer using exclusively two-stroke technology, giving unique advantages in weight and power density. Compared to four-strokes, E-Tech motors produced 30 to 50% lower carbon monoxide and at idle were 50 to 100 times cleaner. If this kind of deep dive content is your thing, subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're planning a series on why the marine industry is more cutthroat than most realize. What Alfadan, Seven Marine and Evinrude reveal is how difficult the outboard motor business truly is. It's not enough having good technology, passionate founders, or even successful products. The marine industry is dominated by giants with nearly unlimited resources, established dealer networks spanning globally, and decades of product refinement. Breaking into this market as a newcomer is nearly impossible, and even established players get crushed by forces completely outside their control. Alfadan shows what happens when ambition massively exceeds capability. Promising to solve century-old engineering problems and revolutionize an entire industry with crowdfunding money is naive or fraudulent. Given the complete lack of delivered products, the distinction barely matters. They took money from enthusiastic boaters believing in the dream and delivered exactly nothing. Whether incompetence or intentional deception, the result's the same: another crowdfunding black eye. Seven Marine shutdown demonstrates corporate politics and environmental goals can override successful products and satisfied customers. Volvo bought an innovative company, extracted value, then shut it down when it no longer fit broader strategy. The marine industry lost a genuinely innovative manufacturer. Mercury inherited the entire market segment Seven Marine created. Wonderful for Mercury, terrible for everyone else. So what should you take away as someone who actually uses boats and outboards? First, be extremely skeptical of any startup promising revolutionary new engine technology. If major manufacturers with billions in R&D budgets and thousands of engineers haven't done it, some crowd-funded startup probably can't either. Physics laws don't care about marketing hype or visionary founders. Second, be careful buying engines from smaller manufacturers, even with real products. Parts availability, dealer support, and long-term warranty service matter just as much as initial performance specs. Seven Marine customers learned this the hard way when their premium engines suddenly had no manufacturer backing despite Volvo's promises. Third, recognize the outboard market is consolidating, not expanding. Evinrude's gone. Johnson's gone before that. OMC disappeared. Force is long dead. Seven Marine was shut down. The trend is fewer manufacturers, not more. Mercury Marine dominates the US market and keeps gaining ground. Yamaha remains strong with reliability reputation. Honda plugs along with automotive-derived engineering. Suzuki competes on price. Tohatsu exists mainly as OEM supplier. That's basically your entire market now. Less competition generally means less innovation and higher prices. Despite these failures and closures, there is legitimate innovation happening in the outboard world. Mercury's new V12 600 horsepower outboard is genuinely impressive engineering, combining naturally aspirated power with smooth operation and reasonable weight. Yamaha's 425 horsepower engines are proven workhorses, powering everything from center consoles to commercial fishing boats. Even Honda, often criticized for being conservative, continues refining their VTEC technology for marine applications. Electric outboards are finally becoming viable for certain applications, though battery technology still limits their use to smaller boats and shorter ranges. Companies like Torqeedo and Elco are making genuine progress in electric propulsion, and major manufacturers are watching closely. If battery energy density continues improving at current rates, electric outboards might eventually challenge traditional combustion engines for significant market chunks, but that's still years or decades away for high-performance applications. The lesson from Alfadan, Seven Marine and Evinrude is the outboard industry is unforgiving. Technology alone isn't enough. Financial backing alone isn't enough. Even a century of history and brand recognition isn't enough if market conditions turn against you. Success requires the right product at the right time, with the right backing and strategy, and even then, corporate decisions or unexpected events can end everything immediately. The Alfadan story represents everything wrong with modern crowdfunding culture. Big promises, slick marketing, legitimate-sounding partnerships, and ultimately zero delivered products. Whether intentional scam or catastrophic incompetence doesn't matter to people who invested based on exciting claims that never materialized. The marine industry is full of similar stories. Startups promising to change everything and delivering nothing. Alfadan is just the latest and more visible example because they generated so much attention on boating forums and crowdfunding platforms. 7 Marine's story is somehow even more frustrating because they actually succeeded at building an incredible product, creating a new market segment, and satisfying customers. They did everything right from business and engineering perspectives, and still got shut down because their parent company decided environmental optics mattered more than profitable products. The loss represents a genuine setback for innovation, and it's a reminder that sometimes success still isn't enough. Evinrude's discontinuation is the biggest tragedy because of history and heritage involved. Over a century of American engineering excellence ended not with spectacular failure, but with a corporate memo citing COVID and strategic realignment. Thousands of loyal customers suddenly had engines from a discontinued brand. An entire two-stroke outboard category essentially disappeared overnight. Alright, we've covered 3 epic failures in the outboard world. From vaporware scams to corporate executions of successful companies. If you made it this far, you're clearly fascinated by marine industry drama like I am. Subscribe to this channel because we're just getting started.